You have like a new file. Then you select a language like Python. Right?
Yeah.
So if you write the code here, once you come to run, you not use bash, you use Python to run the code on the terminal.
So where is now the Python on that left side?
It will appear once we start writing the code. You see now the file is empty.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like if you write like let's say something like simple like
let's say hello world, the normal one they like using.
Sorry to interrupt. I joined to the other link, and I'm the one who's supposed to record. I don't know if you've gone too far, or you can repeat so that I may record everything.
No, we are just starting.
Okay, thank you.
You see now it has appeared.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Now it makes sense.
This way it appears. Once you run the file now, you can continue on the terminal. Run using the Python code. Once you run it on the terminal. So here is where the language that we are using, they appear on this pane.
Okay.
Yep. So go back to our bash.
So you've already explained how to install or to install Git and all that, because I see. Yes.
To install.
To install, where did you begin from?
Is
it possible to just begin afresh for the interest of those who will be watching on YouTube?
Yes, so that we can also have it recorded, please.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Nehemiah, I think he's using GitHub, not Git. I think Git is the one that you can install.
Yeah, you can use this one, the Git bash.
Actually, basically, my question was for the interest of those who, like I didn't join earlier. I wanted everybody to understand everything from the scratch, very beginning, where you began from.
Exactly, like the basics. What is Git? What is GitHub? All those things. Yes.
Sure.
Okay. So this is where we started. We are using VS Code using Git on VS Code instead of using the Git bash itself. So Git basically is a version control tool where you control the version. Like you see, once you make changes, you want to track those changes, so that if something goes wrong, you can go back to an earlier version where the code was working well. Then you can debug and then continue instead of like discarding the entire code. You keep track of every change you make, so that you can go back to whatever point you want to go back to. So it's a version control. You control the coding process or the development process.
So it means we have to install the VS Code.
VS Code, no, it's the same process, but you can use Git bash. It's the same commands. The one you can use here, you can use it on VS Code. But VS Code is easier because it has a text editor and the terminal. You see, the Git bash is only the terminal itself. There's no editor. There's no code editor.
Okay.
For Git bash is only the terminal where you write the commands.
And maybe to add on that, for you to work with Git on your computer, you must install Git bash. Is just like the command line tool, but you must install Git Git in your system so that you can work on
interrupting
either
you.
VS.
I think what everybody is trying to ask is that you just assume that nobody understands what Git Bash is, nobody understands what GitHub, they've never used it before. Just carry them briefly along this process so that everybody can follow then what we are using it for, the purpose as we are doing it, so that everybody will go along. That's exactly what.
So as explained, Git is a version control tool, but GitHub is an online repository where you store those files on the web. So GitHub is a repository where you store those the files that you are tracking. So you have them on your local machine and on GitHub. But Git is for tracking the changes that you make.
Nemo?
So, Commander, sorry, I think we have a lot of questions.
Hello.
Yeah.
I think it's for maybe
I think you can join to the other link.
We are new.
around
So,
that and more.
it's a must for you
Link
to have
gani?
the Git Bash
Hiyo link yenye
downloaded.
mtametaka kwa group.
If you have VS Code, you can use PowerShell.
Sure.
It functions the same way.
Or they function the same.
Oh, sawa.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
VS Code
Welcome.
and Windows PowerShell is integrated. When you install VS Code, to become integrated, so we don't have to use Git Bash.
Okay, that's okay. So today, which terminal are you maybe recommending that we are using, so that we don't get confused between the Git Bash and maybe the VS Code?
VS Code is a text editor. It's like a code editor. Use it to write the code. So it has both the code editor and the terminal where you run that code.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's easier to write the code on the same. You write it and you track it on the same window. Instead of navigating from VS Code to Git Bash, say it will be a lot of work. Yeah. So we proceed. Okay, let's proceed then. So once you open the VS Code, you come here to file. If you want to write a new, like you want to search for something new, you can create a new file. If you already have the file somewhere saved, you can open it, or if it's a folder, you can open it. So for us, it's a folder. So it's just open the folder, then we select it, like that. So what we'll do, we'll come to a new terminal. You see, by default, VS Code picks PowerShell. But I want to use Bash. So we just select Bash if you have it. Then, after that is done, you go to your GitHub, you create this new repository, an empty repository without anything. Okay, so you copy the link that you are given here to clone it to your local machine. So you just copy it and you come here and write git clone. You run it. So to give you this warning, because our repository is empty, but has already been cloned, so it is here. You can see it at the top, right? Now, once you have cloned the repository, you need to move these files that we had to this repository that you created, these 4 files. can either use this one, can use this one to move them, or you can use this one is the easiest. That. Right? This one is not being tracked because I have included it in the Git ignore. Anything that you don't want tracked in that folder, you include it in the Git ignore. And to create a Git ignore file, you just create it in the notepad. You write the file extension like it's let's say file name. Once we save this as Git ignore, that file will not be saved. The one that we have included here will not be tracked. So it is this one that we have here, the XLX, right? Now let's see cards. To check the status of your files, you just use git status. First, we have to move on the original one. Move to this repository, use CD. Then you write the repository name. You move from this path to this path. But we are given this error because this one was not a repository. This was just a folder. Project 2023 is the one that is a repository. So now we can check the status. See, these three are untracked. These three, Git ignore, these scripts and the readme. You can either add them one by one, or you can add them. At once. So to add one by one, just use git add in the file path. Now they are being staged.
Hello.
Kamande, what's the difference between the folder and the repository? Because I thought the repository can be stored in the folder. Maybe you can explain on that.
Between a folder and a repository.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So a folder is just like where you have stored all the files. But a repository is the one that that has the GitHub scripts that can be tracked. You see, once you create a repository, it has like a GitHub. There's that hidden link that connects to GitHub so that you can push the code. But for a folder, it doesn't have that connection. So that's why you can't use Git to track it.
Kamande.
Yeah.
Hello, Kamande.
Hello.
Yeah, I see some people asking they are new to VS Code and also Git. Perhaps can I lay foundation for the beginners, then you take it maybe from there, just to lay a foundation for those who have not even interacted with VS or a Git. Then you can begin on the coding part. Then you can assist kindly.
Sorry, I didn't get that. You want to?
I'm saying I see some people have a question. They are new to VS and also Git. So I thought if I could maybe share with them the basics, and then you pick up from the coding part. Is it possible?
Yeah, it's all right. It's possible.
Okay. Let me share my screen then. Maybe if you can stop sharing the screen just in a few.
Okay, we stop. I've stopped.
Okay, cool. So for beginners, just to get started, they even don't know how to access Git, how to download Git, and also how to download the VS Code. People here are just completely beginners. So I believe people can see my screen. I don't know if I'm sharing my entire screen. You able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see.
Okay, that's great. Now, as Kamende told us, Git is a version control, kind of language. So this help us to track, changes for for our programs or our softwares, and especially if you are into DevOps, this is a very very interesting thing because it helps to streamline the workflow very very easily. So basically, VS Code is just like the IDE for coding. Like a VS Code is like the general. It accepts many languages. You can code Django, Java, you can code literally many languages, but now Git is like that's just a version control, and Git bash that is the command line tool where you can write scripts. You can just write scripts there. But now if you want to write profound codes, for example, for your software, you use these IDEs like a VS Code. You can use Sublime Text, like we have the specific IDEs like for Python. The most powerful one is like a PyCharm. Uh, we have for example for R, we have R Studios and all that. But now a Visual Studio Code, I think this one is more powerful because it allows multiple languages. So to begin with Git, you have to install Git in your system. You have to install Git in your system. We have Git, we have GitHub. GitHub is like the website, and then Git is like the language you use to write your commands. But nowadays, they have the software or the desktop application for instead of writing the codes, you can as well use the application, desktop application. But to get started, you need to have Git. You just search for the Git something download, Git download for Windows. I think I'm using Windows, that's why. But you can see it accepts multiple operating system: Windows, Mac OS, Linux, and all other, operating systems. So for Windows, you just select Windows. There's a logo for Windows, and also there's the label. Just download for Windows. For me, I've already downloaded, and I think most Windows 10 and above, they usually use a 64-bit, and then so you use this standalone. You can use any, but for me, I can go with this standalone window installer. So for you to be able to use actually this Git, it must be in your system. It must be in your system so that when you write the commands for Git, it can be available. So once you have the Git in your system, you can use even PowerShell. That's a command line tool. You can use terminal. If you are in different operating system, you can use a command prompt. There are very many command line tools where you can write these commands, and I'm going to show you in a few. So once I don't know if I'll show you well, because for me I've already downloaded it in my system, but basically this is how you let me try to give it some seconds so that I think it will show. But I think the setup is just straightforward. Once you download, to go to the actually to install it, you just click on the file. If you are on Windows, then just go to next, accept those terms until you finish. I think it's, let me see if it will accept to show, because in most cases you need to uninstall for, or let me try to uninstall. Git, let me try to uninstall anything like this one so that it will bring the uninstalled. Okay, Git. Download. Downloads. So this is the software. Just double click, and then I think just give it some seconds. So basically, this is how you install that Git in your system. Remember, there's some terms here. We have Git and Git. We have Git, GitHub, Git Bash. So GitHub, I said that is the website for that's website, and then Git, that's like a language. That's like the language, and then Git Bash, that's like that's just a command line tool. Whether you can decide to use a command prompt, PowerShell, or a Git Bash, this is just a command line tool. But remember, once you have Git in your system, you can use any command line tool. So this is how you install. You can select your directory where you want to place that file, and then for me, because it's already there, and then so I think in most cases you leave everything by default, and then next, next, let Git decide. You don't want to do many things, just go with the default ones. I go with the default ones. Next, 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 and then here experiment. This one you can just leave them the way they are, and then you install. So basically, this is how you install your Git. Remember, you can't work on Git without installing this Git. Git Bash, I said, is like a command line tool, but Git itself is like a language for writing the codes. You know, that version control. The language, for example, if you want to write the git add, git whatever, you need to have this file in your system. And then also, before you write anything, you must also create the the username. In most cases, you have to add in the username there and all that, so that you may write the programs very well. But I think command will help us on that. I just want to show you the basics, how to get started. So I've installed. You can see it comes with the Git Bash. So this like the terminal, the command line tool. You can see when I click on it, it opens automatically. Now you can see you have that thing like the command prompt, where you can write the code. Command line is like, for example, if you want to check, for example, if you have Python, you just write something like a Python, then dash version. I want to show you something that is similar on on all command line tool. So you can see it gives me the version here. When I use git bash and then let's say Python dash dash version, you can see it also gives me the version. And then when I use something like PowerShell, let me search for PowerShell. So the choice of the command line tool is on your own, but remember all of them, they just work the same, only that maybe the interface and some text here can be different. But just to underscore the fact that the command line tool in most cases is having the same purpose. Sorry, should be what version. So you can see it also gives me the version here. So basically these are just command line.
Nehemiah,
Yes,
PowerShell is for Windows or for what?
Pardon?
PowerShell, it's because Git is for, let's say, the Git bash, and then we have the command prompt for the Windows. Now PowerShell is for?
PowerShell, it usually comes in the Windows operating system. It comes with it by default. I think that's something.
Okay.
And even command prompt, it usually comes by default. And in most cases, all other operating system they have. In fact, even I have Linux here, though it takes time to load. You'll see that it as well have the terminal there. You can write those code scripts there. So these are just command line tool, but you can see the interface not good when you want to write complicated codes. So this is just for writing some scripts, but if you want to write complicated codes or like programs for a software for a web application, then you have to use the IDEs for that. For example, Visual Studio Code, it is multi-purpose. You can use many languages, TypeScript, you can use Python, you can use any language there. So to install Visual Studio Code, you just go to the browser and then search VS Code or a Visual Studio Code. Visual. By the way, we have a Visual. There are two types of. We have Visual Studio Code, and then we have another one called. You can see there's this one for Microsoft Visual. Download Visual Studio. There's another one. I don't know. Visual something. We have another one, Visual Studio, and then we have Visual Studio Code. So you ensure that you go with the Visual Studio Code. You can see this the logo for Visual Studio Code. Don't go with this one with the Microsoft stuff. So use Visual Studio Code. It must be VS Code. Let me see if it will show the logo. So this is the logo here at the top. This is the logo for Visual Studio Code. So here you can use for Windows. You select your operating system here. Supported on Windows 10, 11, and all that. And then if you're using the Ubuntu operating system, you can use anyone here. Then if you are on Mac, you can use the other one here. So again, to install, you just click on this one, then it will download the setup file. And then to install it, just straightforward. You just click next, and then I go with the default. You accept the agreements because it's not harmful, the Visual Studio Code. So you just accept the agreement and all that until you finish, because you already have Visual Studio Code. So I'll not have to actually I won't install because I already have it here. So we've installed two programs here. We have Visual Studio Code, and then we have the Git bash. Actually Git, and it came with it came with what? It came with it came with a Git bash. But it came with a Git bash. Git bash is just like the command line tool. Now to open the terminal, you go to the file. The terminal, when I say terminal, I'm referring to the command line tools where you can write the commands from, the commands. So you go to the not file actually. On VS Code, when it is zoomed out, you will be able to see these files here. But when it is zoomed in completely, let me try to zoom in. You can see it shows this hamburger menu when it is zoomed in, so much. When you click on it, it will show you other option. But when you zoom out, perhaps you might not be able to see, it will be here at the top. Then you click on these three ellipses, this ellipse. Then you go to the terminal. Then, for example, if you want to create a new terminal, just click here. But always take note of the shortcut, because in most cases you'll be using the shortcuts. Control Shift, then backtick if you are on Windows operating system. If you are on Mac, it is a command. The only thing that changes is Command Shift and then a backtick. So because you realize that we have in this operating system, I have Git, I have Git, I have not Git, I have Git Bash, I have command prompt, I have PowerShell. I also have an Conda for Anaconda, because I think I have Anaconda here. So there'll be several command prompts. So the choice is yours. And in most cases, I like working in the command prompt. However, you can select here. You can see we have PowerShell here. When you click on this drop down, you can see we have PowerShell, Git Bash, because we've installed Git Bash. We have command prompt, and then these other stuff here. So you can select any. For example, if you want to, or let's begin with, for example, PowerShell. Now they are embedded within this VS Code, because we have installed in our operating system. We've installed, so they are automatically embedded in this VS Code. So, for example, here I'm using PowerShell to detect or to know the type of command line tool, like a PowerShell, it is PS. So when I try to run here, you'll see that it will still give me the output. I'm using Python, for example, but you can use anything to test. For example, Python version. Python what version should be something like version. So you'll see it will give me the same result the way it used to give me in the main terminal. So when I switch to Git Bash, when I switch to that's Git Bash, yeah, Git Bash, you see by the way it displays here, you can see it is Bash. So here again, when I type something like a Python dash version. So this not, I have not written the correct version. It should be R somewhere. Now there's something that I want you to maybe to use it as a shortcut. Sometimes you can see like here if you want to access the previous code easily in VS Code, you just use the arrow key in your keyboard. So for example, if you want to pull this file here, you don't want to retype again, perhaps you've written a command that you don't want to repeat, you just use the up arrow key, and then it will bring the previous command here. So here you can just modify, just use it as an example, so that perhaps in the future you might as well find it useful. So you can see also this one gives me the same result in the version. So when you go to the rest command prompt, then it will do the same. Now, so this Git Bash, I think now you understand Git Bash, and those are other command line tools. Now, the other thing is about GitHub. GitHub, this is where you now upload your repository or the code base of your files. For example, you have a file and you don't want, and you want to end up by then very soon. I think everything will be like in most companies or most developers, they have to use they have to use Git Bash or to implement or to embrace the DevOps. So for example, if you have something like you've uploaded a website in your you've uploaded a website to the internet, so you won't have to reinstall. For example, you've made changes to the code, you won't have to go to the to your cPanel or to your instance and then re-upload the new file. So the purpose of GitHub, it can help you to just to update the file that you made the changes, instead of interfering with everything. Because for example, you have many users and you made changes to the code, you don't want to pull down the previous code then re-upload with the rest. So the work of Git, it can help in the DevOps, and development, and all that. So GitHub, just go to the website called GitHub, github.com, and then so let me just, now for me I already have an account in GitHub, though I haven't uploaded many, repository. By the way, I have many codes. I think if I could have time, I could as well show you. So let me just switch to my profile. So I think this is the basic, the interface in most cases when you just launch your GitHub. So a repository like these are like the projects you've done, or maybe the folder. I think, how can I put it, the repository like the code base of your maybe application of your website and all that. So the repository is like the storage of your codes, where you want to push your codes. So with this one, you can just click on the repository, and then you can create a new repository, for instance here, and then you can just create a new repository. You give it a name, let's say test, something like a test.
Maya, I think I've lost on how to create a repository.
Yes, okay. Now, so by that, I haven't shown you how to create a GitHub, but I think it's just straightforward. You just go to the website, github.com. Then I think it will provide the username, email, and all that. Then I think you can add as well the second factor authentication, stuff. Now I think it will take you to your profile. I don't know which interface it will take you to, but I think in most cases it takes you to this page. I think this should be the landing page. So if you want to create a repository, you go to this stuff. I don't know how your interface will be, but whenever you see something written repositories, just click on it. So this is where your repository will be. Like you can see, for example, I have this code. These are the projects that I did on YouTube that I taught people on YouTube. So like for example, photograph website, you can see when I click on it, I have all the files for this project. This is just an open source, everything is just accessible. I used Python, just Python and vanilla JavaScript, HTML, and the CSS. You can see you have all the files. For example, let me go to this one. You can see I have all the files here. So the repository is like the code base, or maybe the storage, or maybe the folder for your project that you've uploaded online. I think you understand when I say repository. I haven't explained well, but when you go to the repositories, you can create a new. If you don't have, you can create a new. Then you can give it a file. So the first one, this one defines your actually the owner of the file. So the extension here will be like, for example, if you want to create something like maybe any application, let's say, but let me just use a testing something. So these commands you can write on Git, but also it provides the general or basically the straightforward things without the codes. You can just write here the description. However, on Git you can write what Git commit, then you write what those are descriptions here. And then you can see, for example, if it's not an open source, you want to use it for your organization alone, you can select private so that it may not be accessible by everyone, And then so this one is public. Then readme, for example, if you want to write a description about it, you can just do that. And then git ignore. So git ignore, for example, if you want to have some files that you don't want it to be accessed by people, or maybe to be hidden, so that people can't access it quite easily. For example, the files that contains maybe sensitive stuff, you can as well use the git ignore so that it ignores such files. I think he's going to explain on that. But basically, this is how you create the repository. So you can see it is an empty repository, but you can see it provides maybe the link to clone, and then it has some commands here: git Git in init. For example, let me just give me some second to explain this in a few. Now, for example, if you just have if you just want to initialize a new Git repository, maybe in the current directory, use this Git init. And then, for example, if you want to clone the existing repository, like this one that we have here, you can use git clone. Git clone. Git clone, for example, let me just show you this one just in a few. I don't know if I've copied. Git clone, and then so you can select the place where you want. So I've opened the Visual Studio Code, and then the folder you can. It is always a good idea to have directories so that you can access your files quite easily. So for example, let me try to place it, for example, on desktop. Then I'll create a new file, and then I'll give it a name like let me say, or let me just give it a new folder. Then I'll select the folder, then I'll open it here. So now if you want to clone that file in this repository, you'll use this command. Now you saw the shortcut for terminal. It was Control Shift then a backtick. It will open out the the terminal, the terminal where you can write your commands. So for example, if you want to write git clone, I actually want to clone that repository on your local system. You say git clone, then you'll paste that link. So if you want to clone it in this directory, the current directory, you use the period here. You add here the period here at the end to show that you want to clone it in the current directory, in this existing directory called new folder. So when I click on it, you'll see that it will clone everything, but it was an empty it was an empty directory. You can see you appear to have a cloned an empty directory. Not, I'm saying repository, sorry guys, should be repository. So basically, this is the function of this is the function for a clone. If you want to clone an existing directory, use the git clone. So sometimes you want to check the status, use the git status. I think he's going to explain to us as well. For example, if you want to manage changes or to stage changes, in most cases you use the git add, then the file, and then basically that one adds a file or maybe changes to basically to the staging area. He's again going to explain to us. And also git commit. Git commit, for example, if you want to to write some description about the changes that you've made to your code, in most cases you'll use git commit. Git commit, like for example, this is a good example. Git commit, then the text or maybe the description that you want to include there, and then to view history, git log, and then for example, if you want to create a branch as well, he's going to explain to us. I think you just use git branch and then branch name and all that. So, but for instance, if I want to get all the commands, let's try this. Should be git, sorry, git. For example, if you want to see what, if you want to, for example, to see the list of commonly used git commands, commands. For example, you are stuck somewhere, you can say git, then two what? These are two hyphens. Then you say help. Help. Then you can see it will list for you these these are commands here. So this was just a very basic overview for beginners. So he's going now to explain to us in details how we can now navigate from these are basics to where he was. I saw it twice so that for those who are just beginner or are new to these things can have maybe some clue or a basic understanding of this stuff. So I think I take it to, unless someone has a question, I take it back to him kindly. Have you understood? Or have complicated things? Have you understood or have complicated things?
No, I think now it's easier a little bit.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question on. Oh, sorry, Wasu, have you finished?
For me, I just wanted to lay the basic foundation for beginners. But
No, I'm saying Waswa.
Yeah, I've finished. Yeah, I've finished. I'm good.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to inquire between the difference between, as in not the difference, but what is cloning? Like, what do you mean by cloning? Like, explain it like you are explaining it to a layman.
Oh, sure. So, for example, you have. Let me. You're still able to see my screen. Still, you're able to see the screen. You can see my
Yes.
screen. Okay. So, like for example, I don't know where it is. Where here it is. So, for example, you have like we said that the repository. These are like the storage or maybe the folders or maybe the directories where you have placed your project. So, for example, you don't have these files in your system, and you want to make changes, for example, in the previous codes. You don't have it on your system. You want to have it in your system without writing afresh. So you can download and reuse it. But now, if you want to use the command, if you want to copy the exact code that is here, use now the git clone to copy, to duplicate the existing codes into your local system so that you can write the codes. So for instance, if I want to clone these things here, these are codes, do what I'll copy this URL here at the top, or you can click on this code, and then you can copy now the URL. You can see this URL is the same as what is here. You can as well use here at the top, or you can just copy here. This points to this directory because I've clicked on it to open. So you can see the codes are here, and basically I think this one was just a basic HTML code. So let me show you this one in practice. So let me create a folder. I'll give it a name is T folder 2, and then I'm in Visual Studio Code. I'm in Visual. You can see that folder is now empty. I think you can confirm it is empty. So if you want to have those files that were there in the GitHub, you can do it. You can use now the git clone. Let me show you this one just now. So you go to the folder, then you select open the folder. You choose the folder that you want to work with. Are you able to hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sure. Okay, thank you. So we've selected this folder. You can see it is completely or totally empty, whichever gram it is. Then you can open now here the terminal. I said to open the terminal, go to this ellipse, go to terminal, then a new terminal. But you can see here at the end we have the shortcut Control Shift, then a backtick. So if I want to open it quickly, it is Control Shift backtick. So initially it was empty, but now when I use git clone, then I'll paste this URL here. I'll paste this. I had copied, so I just right click and then it automatically paste it here. Then so when you just do like this, it will open in your, it will place it in your root directory. But if you want to place it in this current folder, use a stereo. You add in the the period here at the end. This period. If I want to tell it that I want to use the same directory here, this for new folder 2. When you hit enter, it will clone all the code that were there in the GitHub. Now it will be in this directory. Let it finish just in a few so that we can confirm on that. And then another trick maybe, for example, if you don't want to go the other process, for example, you have a folder and you want to open it in VS Code without going to the VS Code, then trying to select the files. What you do, I have projects here. Let me do it. I have sensitive projects here for clients. That's why I usually lock my. I think I have for YouTube videos. So for example, web projects, these are just YouTube. They're not that complicated. So for example, if you want to do it, if you want to open, for example, a particular directory. This just about the way as I wait for it to finish. So for example, let me just finish one thing at a time because it might be challenging to some people. Now you can see initially it was empty. This project was empty, but now you can see it has those files that were there in the Git. When you go to the not Git, GitHub, you can see we had the images folder, git ignore, readme, index, HTML scripts, CSS files. So you can see we have the same things. We have CSS scripts, readme, index, HTML, git ignore, images. So we've just cloned, we've just duplicated what was there in the internet to our local operating system, actually to our local environment. So basically that's the work of cloning. You just duplicate or make a copy of what is available in the GitHub to your local environment so that you are able to work with it. And then, for example, if you want to run, for example, this is a HTML file. Don't know which file was it. This was just a basic HTML file. Now, for example, if I want to, I think I'm going beyond my scope. I might complicate things. But let me show you. Let me show you, for example, how, for example, you want to open that code in the VS Code. You can see now VS Code is closed. But for instance, if you want to open that directory, that folder, without going to the VS Code, you just click here at the top, and then I type cmd. Then it will open cmd in that directory. Then if you want to open Visual Studio Code, with code, you just write code, and then you add in asterisk if you want to open the current directory. Just like that, when you hit enter, it will open the Visual Studio Code with the same directory. I think that one can be easier for some people, or a shortcut maybe, perhaps. So I don't know, this was just an extra, but maybe to address the git clone. Let me know if you have understood that. The one who asked. Have you understood?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So let me take it back to him. I think we can proceed now. This was just for those who were, curious, who are asking about the basics. I think they have an overview, basic overview. So you can now take us through the coding part, kindly, or the commands.
Okay, thank you for that. So we had finished staging the files that we have. So complete the status where you have been staged or not. See, now the changes are ready to be committed. The 3 files. Now we can commit them. You can say add. Files. Now it will tell us what have happened. 3 files have been changed and 186 insertion have been made. Now to push these changes to our repository, this one, because it is still empty, it has not changed, because the changes we have already made them in our local machine. But on GitHub, we have not pushed them to GitHub yet. So to push them, just the git push, then origin, where the file originated from. Then you have many branches, but for us, we have only one branch, which is main. Sometimes it can be master, it can be main. You write the branch where you want the changes to go, the last part. Whether it's master, main, or if you have another branch, you write where you want those changes to go. Our changes have been pushed. If you refresh here, you can see it has changed. We have our 3 files, we have the readme and everything. All right. Now we want to make changes to these files, then we push them, but we want to make changes in different branches. Then we can merge the branches later. I click on the branch. Or readme, you can call it documentation. That branch will use checkout. And we call branch. Now you have moved from main to documentation. And edit this and readme to match what we are doing. This was just another readme from another project, so it doesn't relate to this project, so you can delete the entire thing. Then I deleted another one here, so just copy it. Write it in Markdown. Yeah. That. So it tells us our file has been modified. So we add it again now to the new branch. Then we can commit it. See, we have that. Then we can push it. Now that has been done. If you want to check what has happened to all our branches, it's each block, and we only want one line for the roads. Don't want a lot of details. And you graph them. And these are the details that we have made. So documentation, we have updated the readme file. On the main branch, we added the project files. Right. Now we can refactor the Python script and make a few changes. So we can make them in a new branch, or we can make them in the main branch. The master, the main branch.
Excuse me, Commander, even as you continue,
Yeah.
do you mind doing a demonstration using the various projects that we have handled on ALX, like maybe the Excel that we did, how you push it to your Git, things like SQL?
The Excel. For the
Yeah,
SQL,
is there a way that you can push it to your Git?
it's the same process, but for the SQL, I didn't save. I didn't do it. I didn't do the entire script in one document. So I have not compiled it. Yeah.
Okay.
Because as we are doing data analysis, so we didn't use the notebook. So we used the workbench only.
Yeah, so are you going to do like a demo on how you can do it from the workbench? Because I think for the data science, they did both the My Workbench and the notebook.
You see, for the notebook, we just push it the way it is, like a file. The way we pushed, you see the way we push the Python scripts. So that once you download the notebook, you push it as a file. Unless you want
Oh,
to
yeah, okay, that's not what I was asking, whether maybe you can do like an example demo of maybe what you have already done.
what have you done on ALX? Or
Oh, I can talk.
Let me ask, Commander.
yes.
Okay, I think what she's saying, as in, if you have you have some files in SQL Workbench.
Yeah.
So you do it so that we can see. I think that is what Eve is saying. And then me have a question. Sasa usha push your code. I hope watu ni wa Kenya wote. Are there other foreigners? Okay, you have pushed your code to GitHub.
Yeah.
Of course, it will reflect on your repository, sindio? But sasa you see, like for HTML, you can go and run it. It will open under Chrome, sindio? Sasa if you've pushed, for example, you've pushed our Excel files and SQL files. So how will somebody run it? If I want to view it? What I need to I'll just go to my repository and download again. Somebody's repository, I download, then I run it on my.
So what you do, if you have someone else's repository, what you do, you fork it.
Okay.
Once you fork it, then you can clone it to your local machine.
Oh, so that I can run it to my machine, Sasa.
Yeah, you don't have to
Okay.
download.
Okay, Sasa, thank you.
Yeah.
Can we have an example of what you just answered now, or just said? An example of somebody's.
For the SQL to run, you must have all those files. The CSV that they had, because you see the SQL refers to those tables. Without the tables, the code will not run. So you have to have all the tables and then the queries themselves. So to be a long process to do that on VS Code right now.
And maybe to add on what you've said, when you use Excel, actually that's when you upload it on GitHub, that's just like a storage. But now you can't run, like a Visual Studio Code. This one is specifically for codes, but Excel, these are files. So you can just push on Git, basically on GitHub, just as files, but you can't run it the way you run the HTML codes because those are files. Those are not codes. They are different type of files. They're not that code. So you can download it, then configure it manually into your workbench perhaps, or maybe to your note, whichever file it is. But you can't run it the way you run the Python codes or HTML codes. It will just work as a storage where you can just download, upload, but you can't run it the way you run HTML.
And how about sharing the SQL queries from the Jupyter notebook?
See, once you download, so you have the Jupyter notebook, so you can download the notebook itself.
Or perhaps I show them that, and sorry for me. Are you able maybe to show them an example maybe for that? And so that they can put into context. Yes?
Download a notebook.
You don't have, but even me, I don't have the Anaconda.
So, Nehemiah, in short, you're saying if you're trying to share the SQL queries from the Jupyter notebook, you'll simply be sharing the file, not the code.
Yeah. So like you can see something like my SQL, they have a specific, like if you want to use my workbench, actually my workbench, my SQL workbench, that one is most specifically for SQL project. But you can see this Visual Studio Code. This one is, basically for those, main languages like Python and all that. There you can write here SQL codes. But if you want to be more specific, you can just download it on the local machine. Then you can set it manually on your workbench. But because for me, I always find it interesting to write the SQL commands. For example, if it's MySQL database management system, I use MySQL workbench. So you can run it the way you run other code. So you just download, you just clone it to your system, then configure it manually into your workbench. Then if you want to push it back, the same process applies. Remember the command line tool, they are the same. It works on all type of files, be it CSV or any other file, the images, they just work the same. But maybe the ID is for maybe coding the MySQL, coding maybe other programs, they might be different, but the commands, they are just the same. The command, for example, to push, to clone, to commit changes and all that, they are just the same. But so configuration just depends with the IDE that you're using. So if it's code based, code type of files, you can run it directly in the VS Code. But if it require different programs like a MySQL workbench, then you have to configure it manually. If you're using a Google Sheet, then you'll have to import it manually to the Google Sheet, then set up everything the way it is. But you can't run it on VS Code. For example, if it's a CSV, to run it, Visual Studio Code is not, I think, designed for CSV files. But the commands maybe to push, to clone and all that, they're just the same in the command line too. But now for Visual Studio Code, I think that's where the difference can come in. I don't know if you've understood.
Yes, that is clear.
Okay.
Okay. So we can continue. There's simple file I had created here. You make a few changes. So, so the last, now you need to merge the two branches. The documentation branch, because as you can see, our README has not changed. It is telling you, it is still reading what is already earlier because this is not the correct one. We have one branch. You check the documentation branch. So to merge, you make sure you are on the main branch, not on the documentation. So you must make sure you are merging on the main branch or the master branch. So just merge. Then the other branch you want to merge with. Make that. Fresh. then you push the margin to GitHub. Now you have merged on Oracle repository. 5 the files have been updated. To 4 commits. Yeah, I think that's it. That's majorly it, how to push. But if you have like you're collaborating with on a project with someone else, and they have made changes and they have pushed it to GitHub, you can use Git pull so that you can get those changes on your local machine and you can continue from where they left. For example, if we edit this file here, we remove these things. And edit on GitHub as well. Let's assume this is someone else working on the same project with you. You are collaborating. So you have made those changes. And you commit the changes. So for these changes to appear on your local machine, use Git pull. You can see the changes have appeared. Our file has been updated. All right. Any questions?
Guys, if you have any questions, you can ask them so that also Commander will know whether to address them now or to continue.
Maybe hello.
Yes.
Maybe just to it's not that serious, but in most cases when you're using Visual Studio Code, when you want to link it to your GitHub, you can choose to sign in with in this Visual Studio Code. You can as well sign it with GitHub so that everything will be straightforward. Like you can't push straight to the GitHub. Direct. In most cases, you have to give it permission. Maybe that was just a quick one. You can log in with a VS Code so that you can use it quite easily. So that when you push it, it won't have an issue. So you can link your VS Code with the GitHub so that when you do the coding, it won't have an issue. And I remember Git is so profound. We also have the desktop, but I don't think we can cover it today. That was just an add-on.
So if you want to go back to a previous version, use git reset. You can reset soft or hard. Yeah. A soft reset, you don't touch the working tree on the index itself. A hard reset, you go back to the previous version. You discard all the changes once you do the hard reset. So if, for example, if you want to reset and go back to this commit. So you want to reset to that commit, just use git reset. You want to do a hard reset. And now commit is this take these numbers, these ones. The one that Git gives you. And copy them. So you have to type them. Please. So see, a code has been reset. So you have gone back to this Rust commit that we did. Okay. Yeah, that's all from me, unless there are any questions.
Maybe I can just add on something. But maybe someone has a question maybe for you before I say that. Maybe someone will raise the question as we go on. Now you've been seeing a bunch of commands there about. Let me first of all show you. And maybe you are not familiar and I don't know when and where to use a git commit, git clone, and all that. I think let me try to give you a quick, let me exist. You're able to see my screen and also to hear me well. I don't know if my microphone was low. Were you able to hear me? All right. So let me just use even git bash. Let me just use a git bash direct. Remember the embedded terminal, they are just the same as what? They are just the same as these ones. For example, command prompt. Let me use a git bash. Git bash. So sometimes you are not sure which commands to use and all that. I think the quickest way to get started, I don't know if I can zoom in. Let me, yeah, it's possible. So I believe you can see these things. Now, can someone unmute and confirm with me?
Yes, sure, we can see.
Okay, so I think the best way to understand these things, step by step, each command, you can use once you've installed Git, and by the, for the first time, you'll have to set up the username. And remember, for me, I had already, set up my things, but I just straightforward when the prompt appears. When you remember, you can't work with Git unless you've set up your, the username and all that. So that one is just straightforward. When you just try to do the Git stuff, you'll have to set it up. But once you've done that, for example, you want to check on changes or maybe the commands to use, you can, I said earlier, you use the git and then a dash help. It will list for you all the commands. Git dash help. This one is too big. They are too big. Let me try to zoom out. And I don't know why it is listing. Okay. Let me use VS Code. Let me use a VS Code. I think this is easier. Command Shift, then a backtick, then for a beginner maybe to understand, I'm using let me switch to Git Bash. So I say that you can use a Git and then a dash help. A Git dash help. So this one you can see it lists for you all the commands and there are some description, like for example, git help, the general one, then I will have these other commands. Remember, if you're using git, you have to begin with the keyword git. The first thing, you begin with the git and then the command and then the next thing. So for example, if you want to understand perhaps in details about what maybe the git clone does, you can do this. You can say, let's say for example you want to understand what git commit does. You can see we have some bunch of stuff here, or you want to maybe specifically understand what git commit is. So what you do, is it clear? Okay, yeah. So for example, if you have a lot of code and I want to clear so that you have a clean interface, you use clear. And in other stuff you use don't know, CLC or something. But in Windows it is clear. For example, if you want to clear the codes here, use a clear, just write clear, then it will clear for your stuff. So for example, you want to understand what git commit does, just write git and then git commit, then dash help, help, git, and then the command name, then dash help. So this will provide what this one will give you. It will direct you to what this command does. You can see we have a detailed overview about what git commit does, and you can see we have a detailed description and all that. You can see there's a lot of explanation about that. Now let's try with the clone. Let's try git clone. So I said earlier that if you want to pull the previous command, you can use the arrow key that points up. If you want to pull the commands at the top here, just do arrow key, and then you can as well use this thing, the forward and the back arrows. Then here you can say, for example, clone, and then it will give you some detailed overview of git git clone, what it does in the complete details. So basically, in a nutshell, if you want to initialize a new repository, it is init. If you want to clone, by that the descriptions are here. I don't know. We have let me git help. git help. So you can see I need to create an empty git repository or to reinitialize the existing one, to clone. For example, if you have an existing, for example, you've just been invited to participate on a previous on an existing maybe project. You don't have it in your system, so you can use clone an existing repository. You can use git clone so that you can use it on your system. Then you can see add, maybe if you want to add files to you want to add in the files there, in the files that you want to maybe to push and all that. We have a lot of descriptions here. So basically Git is, I think, much profound. It is detailed. In fact, we also have the Git desktop. So if you don't want to interact with the codes and all that, you don't want to do a lot of stuffs. I don't know if I uninstalled or I have it. GitHub. Is it Git desktop? Let me. Not sure if I have, or I can just search here. Git. Yeah, GitHub desktop. Yeah, here it is. Here it is. So this one summarizes everything for you. So you won't be interacting with codes. So like for example, you can see I have everything here. So for example, to clone a new repository, let me just do. So I think I had some files here already. But if you want to clone a new repository, you can see you just go to the add. Then, for example, to clone a new repository, just click on clone. And then you go to the URL, then you just paste the URL, then you choose the directory, then you clone. So you haven't written any code there. So if you want to perhaps create a branch, so like for example, you want to create a branch on this one, and you just create a new branch, and then branch name, and then you create a branch. So this one, it is much easier for those who don't like coding. The desktop is a nice tool for you. So just, for example, if you want to make changes, let me add in a file into this React app. Let me do this. How can I think it's here, GitHub. Then it was, I think, a React app something. In fact, I don't have anything. Let me try it. Let me find something. Let me change to a different repository. I think weather apps or something. Yeah, weather app. Then weather app. Here it is. So let me just copy, duplicate. I think I'll have made the a change to this one. So you can see I have this file here. So when I go to this one, you can see it just lists for you. You can just write here the description, then you just, for example, if you want to commit to main, you can just do it without coding. You just update the file there, make changes, so it will automatically detect that you've made the changes, and then you can do it. You can you can write here some things, then commit. You can commit to the main, and then if you want to push, you can do the the push here. Remember, here I've linked this Git desktop to my GitHub account. So anything I do here, it will automatically update in the website, in the GitHub website. So if you don't want to interact with the codes, then this tool is for you. This software. It is called a GitHub desktop. I think that's what I wanted to add on. Remember, GitHub is kind of profound and detailed. So, but I know we are together in this. I know by the time we do it, by the time we continue, I think we'll continue in this group. So with time, I think we'll understand everything in details. So unless someone has a question on that, maybe. If there's no question.
So, Lena, thank you for the explanation. I just want to clarify.
Yes,
Is
yes.
GitHub the same as desktop?
Pardon?
Is GitHub same as Git desktop?
GitHub, like you can see now, when we are using the command line tools, we were interacting with the codes. So you can say the GitHub desktop is like the Git, but now here you're using the GUI, you don't write the codes. So you can say like the GitHub desktop is the same as those are commands that you are writing, but now here you're using the GUI, not the code itself. So in comparison, you can say GitHub desktop is similar to the command that you are writing, but now the website itself is different. The website is github.com. So you can as well write the commands as well there. You can as well write the commands, not commands actually. You can just write manually. For example, if you want to create, like you saw earlier when we were creating the repository and all that, and changes, we are just writing manually without using the codes. I think by the this is a good when you say GitHub and a GitHub desktop, I think that's almost the same. I think GitHub.com and a desktop, I think they're the same. Now here you're using software, and it is much easier. I think yes.
Yeah, I don't want to be sure. So we don't have three different platforms. We have two. There is Git, there is GitHub, and there is Git desktop. So I want to be sure which one is same. You have three things or just two?
There are three things. Now the github.com, that's the website, the platform for these Git stuff. So we have the github.com, you have to create an account there. And then now if you don't want to write the codes, for example, to push the code there to the repositories, you don't want to write the codes. So instead of writing the codes, you can download this GitHub desktop. So you don't write, you just add the files, and then I commit, and then you link this GitHub to your github.com website, so that anything that you do here, it updates automatically. So this one is just it is just the
GUI.
Yeah, the GUI. I think that's the best one.
Thank you so much.
Instead of writing the codes, you use this one. But all they are pointing to the github.com, the main repository there.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think also for me, that's what I had maybe to add on. I remember GitHub is so deep. But we'll continue as we go on. Unless someone has a question, I'll return it to Eve. Who was the moderator, please? I'm used to Eve, so I think that always it is Eve. I don't know, I joined late. I don't know who was the moderator.
Eve is the moderator.
Okay, yeah. So I return it to her.
Thank you guys for coming. Thank you, Commander, for the demo, and Nehemiah for helping as well. It seems there is a lot to cover, so we may have another session, and we will get there eventually. I know to most it may be sounding like Greek, but we'll get there slowly. So thank you guys. We'll be communicating on the next session on the group. Unless there is anyone with a comment or a question, think we can leave the meeting at our own pleasure.
Maybe before we leave, you said something about the MCQ. Is it 4? When are we meeting? Or maybe I'll check on the group. Sorry.
The project 4, we the day that was highly the option that was highly voted for is tomorrow. From tomorrow, starting tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, or until we finish. So we might, depending on how fast we move, we might finish even before Friday. But according to the votes that you guys gave, it's starting tomorrow, our usual time, 8:30.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, so have a good night all.